This is Mary Page from Chicago, and welcome to our next Rights in Russia interview on the situation for human rights defenders in Russia. Today, our guest is Anna Sevortian, currently the executive director of the EU-Russia Civil Society Forum and formerly the Russia director at Human Rights Watch. She has university degrees from Harvard and Moscow State University, and it has an impressive body of research in both English and Russian. Thank you for joining us, Anna, and for sharing your thoughts about the environment for civil society actors in Russia today. I have some questions I'd like to pose to frame our interview, which we hope to complete in about 30 minutes. So let's get started with my first question. 10 years ago, the EU-Russia Civil Society Forum was founded. Could you say briefly what it is, why the organization was set up, and what were the aims of its founders?
Thank you very much, Mary, first of all, for having me. And yeah, it's a great pleasure and honor to spend this next 30 minutes with you. The EURussia Civil Society Forum was founded exactly 10 years ago, but of course, the talks and preparations for that started earlier. We are a network currently of 185 NGOs groups in Russia and European Union or Europe broader than that. And we were starting with, of course, fewer members back in the day in 2011. The founding meeting was in Prague, and there was 40 odd organizations there. Of course, the political situation, the mood was very different back in the day. So some might remember that 10 years ago, it wasn't President Putin, but President Medvedev governing Russia. And there were many hopes that there might be an opening, it might be a thaw, and there were huge protests happening in the city of Moscow and other places after the election of 2011. So it was actually very, very interesting, a very different time altogether, very different compared to today, I guess. Well, still it was pretty obvious that for the Russian civil society, already many restrictions were in place. And despite this moment of opening, unfortunately, it was very soon followed by pretty straightforward restrictions and restrictive legislation. But still, this moment of opening, Russian activists and their European counterparts got together and thought, well, why don't we try to, well, make something for ourselves that our countries are not doing for us as citizens. It was obvious that cooperation, official cooperation, was pretty much stalled already between Russia and the EU, or was not moving in the right direction at all, definitely not for citizens. And I guess it's a very simple idea behind our forum. I mean, we're citizens, we are strong, we're not unimportant, and we just want to be doing what is not being done for us. So we want to be together despite the political pronouncements, both in Europe and in Russia, that were already pretty much isolationists, I would say at that point, even 10 years ago. Like, we want to be together. We want to try to build this association and try to see how we can put together some of the infrastructure for the international civil society, if you will, for the civil society beyond the borders. And this is our mission till this very day. And this is what we are. And this is what we're trying to do.
So how would you describe the forum's main achievements over these 10 years? What has it done?
Yeah, well, I think we've been, there's never, I guess, an end point to civil society beyond the borders, but I think we've been, well, good at promoting this idea and the value of well, having this cross-border dialogue on difficult and important topics, including human rights, including climate. And the most important thing, I guess, in this climate of isolationism, where, well, Russia is Russia-centric, Europe was, or has been pretty much on the way to be more Europe-centric, or pay less attention to, again, the diversity of what happens in Russia. So we've been really promoting this agenda of, well, keeping the channels open on the people-to-people level. I mean, we need to know what's going on. We need to be connected, and there's a huge, really, desire for that in the Russian community. I mean, on the level of activists, of course, human rights activists, NGOs, but I mean, much broader. Well, young people, specialists, scientists. I mean, it's quite normal to be willing to be part of a larger world. Even if, say, you're working in some well, institution that is proudly saying, you know, we're promoting Russian science or whatnot. I mean, it's just normal in this globalized environment to be part of a larger world. So we're just trying to create infrastructure for that. That's what I'm trying to say through the projects that we run on different topics, through, well, exchange programs, through giving out grants for partnership projects, through organizing events, and I guess just well, through bringing Europeans to Russia and Russians to Europe, so that well, the first-hand information is available to both sides and what's happening. I don't think we really get this information from the news. So I think that's been 10 years of you know, this kind of infrastructure work. I call it infrastructure. And the main thing about infrastructure and those kind of alliances and umbrella organizations is that when the infrastructure is not there, everybody noticed that, like, oh, there's no road, or the, you know, the water is not flowing. How can that be? But when it's in place, it's just being taken for granted. So it's not to get credit for working on the infrastructure for the civil society and these people-to-people contacts, but I'm just glad it's there, and many are finding our programs and our offers to yeah, to connect with their peers in Russia or in Europe. So that's how I would speak about our achievements, because there are many successful projects. You know, we had wonderful exhibition about the history books about the Second World War in very different countries, and how these narratives are different. We had lots of, you know, very successful initiatives on exchanges, and the well, gender activists, LGBTI community met, you know, went for a tour in Berlin, just the city seen through the eyes of a woman. And now we're also having a program of having a series of such tours created in various cities. So I mean, there's a lot in the works. There's a lot that we've done in terms of those simple project metrics, but I would just rather speak about overall impact or our contribution to that impact, and I would definitely see us as building some of that infrastructure.
Thank you. You touched a little bit earlier on the individuals that come to the forum, and I wondered if you could say a little bit more about who participates in the forum and to what extent it helps to create lasting connections among civil society groups and individuals who are taking part.
Well, forum started with NGOs, with organizations, with those, you know, understandable units of civil society. But what's also interesting that things changed a lot in the past years. And I don't think we know, I mean, we no longer speak of civil society, of course, as the world of NGOs. I mean, I guess we never did, but we do even less. Simply because it's so diverse, and with the arrival of the social media, people just tend to connect in very different ways, and we're also adjusting to that. So it's correct to speak of individuals that are coming to forum. Plus, I think on the Russian side, unfortunately, because it's been made so difficult for NGOs to kind of keep running as NGOs. We also have lots of individuals that are coming together as informal groups. And they can also be our members as such groups. It was a decision taken already many years ago. It was clear that this is how things would be developing, and they are. And these are, yeah, very interesting mix of generations as well. We have some of the, on the Russian side, some of the, well, I would say people would know as dissidents, or organizations that came into being also as informal movements, well, probably still in the Soviet Union. So it's quite a it's quite a history, quite a story. And we have some of those super young professionals that are absolute digital natives. And then, of course, these people are creating very different vibes and very different products within the forum. So we're just also trying to keep the generations together and talking to each other, because we see additional value for that. So yes, there's quite a few, the warm glow, I would say, around the forum of different types of people that are there. For instance, we have something called expert group on transborder corruption that I guess not even all members of the forum are aware of, because these are individuals based, again, all over the region. And well, looking into transborder corruption cases and publishing reports. This is something, again, less visible, lesser known, but this is under the auspices of the forum. There are groups, informal, but just well, coming together as a result of working on a project. For instance, we have a State of the Civil Society report, a publication which is, well, not quite academic, but analytical, and researchers that were working in different country chapters simply stayed in touch with each other. Now we have such expert group of civil society researchers with us. Or a project called Legal Dialogue, where we speak of the importance of using the common legal framework that is there for Russia and Europe, specifically through the Council of Europe and the European Convention of Human Rights. And we have a website, people write articles, and then they're also kind of connected. And it's very gratifying to see all of a sudden that there is interest, and there's just broadening of the way people see things. It's not, for instance, if it's a European researcher that never worked on Russia, and then all of a sudden they see colleagues that have the exact same values, the exact same approach, and they become connected. I mean, it's a very gratifying moment, and that's exactly the moments we work for. So yeah, again, if it's just a contact between two people and it's becoming a lasting professional connection, we consider it a success. Though, of course, again, it's not about numbers. It's not about just getting to particular indicators. I think we have a slightly, I mean, it's still, of course, this is how we look at things also, but we know that it's not just about numbers. It's about the quality of those contacts that we're trying to create.
So do you think Western media then tend to paint too bleak a portrait of the apparent increasing restrictions on civil society in Russia? And what do you think have been the main causes for these negative trends?
Well, as somebody with the media training, of course, the last thing I'm going to do is blame poor journalists. Uh, they are painting a bleak picture, and we can speak a lot about the media industry, what's been happening to journalism, how it also needs our support, actually. And it's one of the topics we picked up as a forum lately, supporting the free media, supporting journalists, journalism, and would be starting a course for civic journalists this year. But yes, I would say that I don't really find the well, the news source that would give me a good panoramic picture of what is happening in Russia. It's, well, we quite often see political news, you know, something about President Putin. I guess the question I get very often, what do you think is happening in, you know, in somebody's head? And I don't know. Of course, the answer to that question, I mean, nobody does, except for that particular person. I don't see enough news about citizens, right? I don't see those kind of local news that really give you a feel of community and the feel that, I mean, Russia is not about Putin. Russia is not about, you know, again, particular individuals. It's just a very big country where lots of things are happening. We do see more of a negative, you know, negative news from Russia. Or yeah, I would say I see some bias too. It tends to be interpreted in the negative way, or many things might be interpreted in a negative way. So why does this happen? What is important? Well, access to Russia is important, and access to, of course, again, first-hand information is important. It's important that journalists are interested and going there and, you know, are working on the ground and bringing different types of stories. So again, I'm not blaming journalists because then there needs to be, well, again, here in infrastructure somehow is a big big word for me today. There needs to be infrastructure for them to be doing their work on the ground, and we know that conditions for that were unfortunately worsening lately, also for economical reasons. But yeah, in a sense, I would love to see more diverse reporting on Russia, also geographically, not just the big cities, but, you know, various places, and not necessarily just stories about, you know, big political changes or about the, you know, vaccine diplomacy and whatnot. So we do need just the human stories, so that we're not, again, seeing Russia as Russia's Putin, but yeah, Russia as a huge country where lots of things are happening. And well, I've just been to Russia after a year of not of not going there because of Corona. And it's my personal theory that, you know, you really need, with places like Russia, you really need to go every few months, otherwise you completely lose touch. And so I think my hypothesis was quite good, because when I arrived, I saw something that completely wasn't fitting my frame of somebody who is running an organization living in Germany. It was, again, it was very diverse. It was very interesting, even on the level of Moscow, how many things were happening, how many things were possible. Again, of course, I tend to see it through the prism of, okay, horrible repressive legislation introduced. There's going to be no way the civil society is able to act. Then I'm coming there, and yeah, well, people just are showing a lot of inner freedom, and that's, I think, a very important thing, and not just doing things that I thought would not be possible. So yeah, these type of stories, I would really love to see that.
To what extent are your partners in Russian civil society able to function effectively? And are they running specific risks by taking part in the forum?
Yeah, as a director of an NGO, of course, you spend time thinking about the risk assessment. And the year 2021 started for me with just reading through this host of restrictive legislation that was signed into law a few days earlier by the President Putin. And yeah, the restrictions are really massive. So in terms of human rights, I think it's really a big shift in the legal framework. We know that application is slightly different than the framework itself. The framework is definitely repressive, restrictive. So yes, it means risks for people engaged in any kind of public activity, and anything can become political, quote unquote, activity. And yes, things that would be celebrated again in Europe as great and courageous, as well, show of solidarity, or standing up for your own rights, are not necessarily seen that way. They're seen as political, and that means okay, dangerous, potentially contagious, potentially. So this is the situation for our member organizations, and of course we were very openly having that conversation with them. I mean, very openly having this conversation over secure channels, I guess. That's the way it goes these days. And it was not clear what their position would be on that. And it's obvious that we will always support members in their choices. It's wonderful when your association is growing, but it's not, again, our goal. So we thought, okay, well, people might think it's it's too risky for them to be part of an international association these days. And so far, the reaction we've seen from the members was, well, you know what, I mean, we know the risks, but that's actually one of the very few platforms that connects us to the outer world, and we so much want to be a part of that different world. And again, we want our inner freedom, that no, we're not, we're not changing anything. It doesn't mean that they will not change anything about their membership. It doesn't mean there's no additional risk for them. But for now, this is their choice. So we didn't see any drop in membership. We actually did not. We kind of received the opposite reaction from the members, saying, "Oh, it's actually great. We're so proud to be part of the fourth." Okay, very good. So yeah, that's also one of the good things of I guess well, working so much on the community level, creating the community, and they know that yeah, this is a lasting connection. And well, again, we're better together. It's better to be together in this situation also of additional pressure. It's better to have ways to release that pressure and to be connected with like-minded people. So that's my explanation why I guess yeah, nothing is happening to our membership. I think it's been also growing slowly since 2021.
Well, that's great to hear. There's also an intergovernmental architecture that brings together states of the EU and Russia, as well as some other countries not in the EU, and that's the Council of Europe. In your view, how important is the Council of Europe for the development of civil society and the protection of human rights in members' countries?
Council of Europe, we do see as a very, very important institution, especially if we, I mean, well, not especially, I mean, it's just a very important institution, full stop. For the Russian constituency, however, it's even more important because it's the only access for them to international, intranational justice. It is a huge change, maybe the biggest change that happened for Russian context since the fall of the Berlin Wall. It says access to international justice through the European Court of Human Rights, Russia's accession to the Council of Europe, and subsequent access to the European Court of Human Rights. It is a part of our political reality. Strasbourg became a word. I mean, people would not know, of course, how to file an application. But Strasbourg is synonymous to many people for justice, or some, some higher, some other justice that is probably better than the Moscow justice or Basmanny justice. And it is a big achievement. So in that sense, the debates a couple of years ago, when Russia was about to, to leave, or to, I would say to leave the Council of Europe. Of course, it was a very important moment of, I guess, just reassessing the value of this membership. For Russia, that's pretty much it's unique and the only framework of that sort left at the moment. That's why, of course, the value is much greater for Russians of having this access, as compared to, say, citizens in the European Union that would have a parallel systems for justice, or their own system might be actually quite robust. So there's less of a need of looking for international justice, because you can achieve it on the national level and you trust the institutions. So yes, in that sense, it's of course very important, and I see that this debate will be coming back. It's coming back all the time, since Russia's human rights record is not getting any better. And we spoke a little bit, we touched on the legislation, which is about the educational activities, which is about the freedom of association, which is about very, very fundamental political freedoms that are being infringed on. So with all of that, of course, the record is getting worse and worse, and is hardly compatible with those ideals and the standards that Russia signed up when becoming a party to convention and becoming a member of Council of Europe. So the big question here is what to do for the Council to keep the quality of processes inside, for the court to keep the quality of justice, and to deal with states that are, not at all planning to be improving their human rights record, or just acting in the way that it's not improving. Maybe it's a coincidence. Russia is not alone. There are other states like that, which also makes it even more difficult for the Council. And here I'm coming back to the forum and how important this topic is for us. We're actually starting a big coalition or coalitioning process at the moment for all the NGOs, from Europe, from Russia, from other places that are interested in a stronger Council of Europe, and a better quality of justice, and having instruments of dealing with countries that are not respecting the basic international human rights standards and agreements, or violating them in particular sections of these agreements. So how to match the pronouncements with a toolbox, so to speak, for the Council of Europe, and we would be formulating our suggestions and would be working much more with the Council of Europe with this particular purpose, to make it a stronger institution, because there are many ways in which its legitimacy or its strength is being eroded. And again, we're not unimportant, so we we feel that citizens need to have their say.
So overall, relations between Russia and the EU seem to be deteriorating. And what impact do you think this is going to have on future Russia and EU civil society relations?
Yes, just earlier this week, we had an address from the HR VP, Vice President of the European Union, Josep Borrell, at our event dedicated to the 10th anniversary of the forum. And I just quote him, the relationship are at a very low point. Yes, I guess we agree that they are at the very low point. And still, I guess I would be optimistic at least. Well, I want to be optimistic about many things, but I want to be for sure optimistic and keep working on people-to-people relations. And yeah, I just tend to, again, ignore sometimes the external difficulties. And I think that on the level of citizens, again, we can and we should be creating then kind of alternative ways of talking to each other and keep talking to each other. Though this is not necessarily you know, the way is not paved for us by our governments through, you know, good negotiations and really creating such avenues. Though it's interesting that at the meeting of Mr. Borrell and Mr. Lavrov in Moscow, at least on the level of pronouncements, both sides said people-to-people relations are, of course, important. Mobility is important. So, yeah, I mean, I would be just building, again, what we can build based on that. There's no way for us not to communicate. There's no way for us not to cooperate. So I think as citizens, we should be also just be more vocal about the need for, yes, an easier visa regime. Yeah, for Russians to come to Europe. I mean, oh my God, it is very bureaucratic. It is still very difficult. I mean, needs to be easier for sure. Russia's been doing a few things actually to make it easier. They simplified the visa regime. Well, I would be experimenting with that. I mean, it's important that we have access, right? So yeah, I mean, I would expect again, building on those at least pronouncements, at least the goodwill to say these things at a press conference. I think we should be just pushing for concrete actions by the two sides, at least on the people-to-people level, but actually on other levels too. On the relationships, yes, they are at a low point. But again, I think it's important that the sides are talking to each other. You know, these channels need to be open. Again, there's no way of not cooperating with each other. And I don't think that anybody has any doubts about that.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid we're going to need to end here because our 30 minutes are up. But I want to thank you, Anna Sevortian, for making time for Rights in Russia and for sharing your insights and perspectives today. Wishing you the very best, Anna, and goodbye from Rights in Russia.
Thank you very much, Mary. It was a pleasure.